The pain hit before I even opened my eyes. It came in waves, sharp and deep, like something inside my chest had been rearranged without permission. I tried to move my left arm and immediately regretted it. A sound escaped my throat that I would not call a scream, but it was not far off either. The ceiling above me was pale and curved, lit by long strips of cold blue light that hummed at a frequency I could feel in my back teeth. Not a human hospital. The smell alone told me that. It was clean in a way that had no warmth to it, like the inside of a cloud that had never seen rain. I had made it. Barely, but I had made it. The ship had gone down 3 days ago. A convoy escort run that turned into something no one had planned for. We hit an unmapped debris field, traveling at the wrong speed, and the hull gave way in 4 places at once. I had been in the lower corridor when it happened. The last thing I remembered clearly was grabbing a cargo strap and holding on, while everything around me screamed and buckled and went dark. When I woke up the first time, it was in an alien medbay. When I woke up this second time, it was still in an alien medbay, but now there was someone standing over me. She was tall, maybe 2.5 meters, with a narrow thorax and limbs that bent at angles human joints simply did not allow. Her skin was a deep charcoal gray, and along the sides of her neck ran thin lines of bioluminescence, pale green, that pulsed faintly when she breathed. Her eyes were large and amber, with no whites at all, just 2 solid discs of gold that caught the light and gave nothing back. She wore a pale uniform with a medical insignia I did not recognize, and she was holding a scanner the size of a dinner plate, pointing it at my ribs. She noticed I was awake and tilted her head at an angle that no human neck could manage. "You are conscious again," she said. Her voice came through a translator node clipped near her collar. It rendered her words in flat, precise English, though the rhythm was slightly off, like someone had learned the language from a manual rather than from people. "I am Geral. I am the primary attending nurse for this ward. Do not attempt to stand." "Wasn't planning on it," I said. "My name is Owen Garrett. I was 29 years old, a cargo technician aboard the freighter Caldera Cross, and I had just survived something that should not have been survivable. I knew this because Geral told me, in her precise, unhurried way, that 3 of the 12 crew members recovered from the wreck had not made it through the first night. She said it the way someone reads a weather report. No cruelty in it, but no warmth either, just fact. I lay in that bed and felt the fact settle into my stomach like cold stone. Corin. That would have been Corin, the navigation tech who always burned his coffee because he got distracted talking. And probably Dara, the cargo chief, who had 2 daughters she showed photos of every chance she got. I did not ask Geral for names. I was not ready for names yet. What I did was look at the ceiling and breathe. She left after completing her scan, and I was alone in a room that smelled like a laboratory and sounded like the inside of a machine. The walls were smooth and jointless. There was a small window to my left, looking out onto a corridor where other beings moved past in quiet efficiency. Some were the same species as Geral. Others were different, shorter, with wide flat heads and 4 arms folded neatly behind their backs. None of them looked in. The next morning, a young nurse came to check my fluid line. She was Geral's species but smaller, with brighter bioluminescence along her jaw. She moved quickly and kept her eyes on the equipment. Her hands, when she adjusted the line near my wrist, were trembling very slightly. "Long night?" I asked. She froze for half a second, like the question had come from the wall rather than from me. "I apologize," she said, through her own translator. "I do not understand the question's purpose." "It means you look tired," I said. "Your hands are shaking. That usually means someone has not slept enough or has been dealing with something hard." She looked at her own hands like she had not noticed them. Then she looked at me. Her amber eyes were wide, uncertain. "Ward 6 had a critical patient overnight," she said slowly. "The procedure was long." "Did it go okay?" Another pause. Longer this time. "The patient survived," she said. "But it was not easy to watch." "That sounds genuinely hard," I said. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she finished adjusting the line, checked 2 readings on the panel above my head, and left without another word. But just before she stepped out, She paused in the doorway for a fraction of a second, like she was thinking about something. Then she was gone. I did not think much of it. I was still working through my own grief in small, careful pieces, the way you eat when your stomach hurts, a little at a time. I thought about Corin and his burned coffee. I thought about Dara's photos. I thought about the sound the hull had made when it went. I lay very still and let it move through me, because I had learned a long time ago that grief you avoid just turns into something heavier later. On the second day, 2 nurses came to calibrate the biomonitor above my bed. The monitor did not need calibrating. I could tell because it had been blinking green and steady since I woke up, and neither of them looked at it for more than 5 seconds. What they did was linger. One of them asked me, carefully, in halting translated English, what the silver bracelet on my right wrist was for. I told her it had belonged to my older brother, who had died 4 years ago. She asked how I carried something like that without it hurting every time I looked at it. I told her that it did hurt every time I looked at it. That was sort of the point. It kept him close. She made a sound I did not have a translation for, something soft and low, like wind through a narrow place. They stayed for 11 minutes. Neither of them touched the biomonitor. On the 3rd day, I noticed the pattern. A nurse I had not seen before came to replace a fluid pack that was not yet empty. She did it efficiently, and then sat on the small stool near the door and asked me, with great formality, if humans experienced what she called sustained internal conflict without external resolution. I told her we called it worry, or grief, or sometimes just being alive. She asked how we continued functioning in that state. I told her we mostly just talked to each other until it felt slightly less impossible. She stayed for 18 minutes and left looking different than when she arrived. Lighter, maybe, or at least less tight around the jaw. That afternoon, Geral walked in and stood at the foot of my bed with her scanner in her hand and an expression on her face that I was beginning to learn meant she was very precisely not showing what she was thinking. 3 separate members of this facility's nursing staff have filed procedural logs citing visits to your room as operational necessity, she said. The operational necessity is unclear in each case. Is that right? I said. It is. I am required to ask whether you have been soliciting their presence or making requests outside of standard patient protocols. I haven't asked anyone to come here. Then can you explain why Ward 7's senior nurse, who has not voluntarily entered a patient room outside her ward in 6 years, was observed standing in your doorway for 4 minutes yesterday evening? I thought about it. Did you ask her? I said. Geral's bioluminescent lines pulsed once. She said she came to observe your recovery progress. Maybe she did. Her ward has no administrative connection to yours. Then maybe it wasn't about the recovery. Geral looked at me with those solid amber eyes and said nothing for a moment. Then she noted something on her scanner, told me my tissue repair was progressing within acceptable margins, and left with the same efficient quiet she always carried with her. But at the door she paused, just for a second, the same way the young nurse had. Then she was gone. That evening, I asked the orderly who brought my meal tray what Geral had been like before I arrived. He was a squat, wide-shouldered being with 4 arms and a face that expressed emotion mostly through the coloring of the rings around his eyes. He thought about the question carefully. She is very good, he said. The best nurse in this facility. She does not make errors. She does not lose focus. She does not allow difficulty to alter her performance. Does she ever talk to anyone? I asked. I mean, not about work. He looked at me for a while. The rings around his eyes went a deeper blue. No, he said. I do not believe she does. He took the empty tray and left. That night, I could not sleep. The pain had reduced to a dull pressure, manageable, and the ward was quiet. I was thinking about Dara's daughters, ages 8 and 11, who were now going to have a conversation with someone that no child should have to have. I was thinking about Corin and the mug he always left on the navigation console, and how someone was going to have to clear it away and put it somewhere, and that small, awful act was the kind of thing that broke people more than the big losses did. I heard footsteps. Slow, unhurried, practiced. Geral came in at 2:15 in the morning with her scanner, the same as always. She moved to the panel above my head and checked my readings the way she always did. Clean, efficient, no wasted motion. I watched her work. "Rough night?" I said. She stopped. Not abruptly, she simply stopped, the way a machine stops when a circuit breaks. One moment in motion, the next completely still. "That is the phrase the junior nurse mentioned," she said quietly. "She said you asked her that." "I ask most people that," I said. "It usually turns out to be true." Geral set the scanner down on the edge of the panel. She did not pick it back up. She stood very still with her back to me, and her bioluminescent lines pulsed 3 times in quick succession, which I had started to understand meant something she did not have words for yet. "There was a patient in Ward 9, she said finally. "She came in 4 weeks ago. A child. A very small child who should not have been on a transit vessel at all." She stopped. "She did not survive the night. 2 days ago." I did not say anything. "I administered every protocol correctly," she continued. "I have reviewed my actions 14 times. Every decision was correct. The outcome was not a product of error." "No," I said gently. "I don't think it was." "Then why?" she said, and her voice through the translator was still flat and precise, but something in the cadence had shifted, something underneath the words that the machine could not smooth away. "Does it feel as though something inside me has been damaged?" "Because it should," I said. She turned around and looked at me. "That does not make sense," she said. "Not losing sleep over a child you couldn't save would mean something was wrong with you," I said. "Feeling like this weight, that's just what caring costs. It's expensive. It was always going to cost you something. That's not damage. That's evidence that you were trying." She stood absolutely still for a long time. Then she sat down on the small stool near the door. Not the chair that patients' visitors used, the functional stool, low and plain, that was clearly just meant to hold equipment. She sat on it anyway, straight-backed and careful, like she was not entirely sure the action was permitted. "You lost crew members," she said. "I reviewed your intake record." 3, I said. "At least, possibly more. I don't know the full count yet." "You have not asked for the full count." "Not yet. I'll be ready for it soon." "How do you know when you are ready?" "I don't, exactly," I said. "I just wait until the first piece stops being unbearable. Then I pick up the next one. It's not a system. It's more like just putting one foot in front of the other and trusting that eventually you're somewhere different than you started." Geral was quiet for a very long time. "We do not speak about these things," she said finally. "In this facility, I do not mean it is forbidden. I mean it simply does not occur. We care for patients. Patients recover or do not recover. We move to the next patient." "That sounds incredibly lonely," I said. She looked at me with those amber eyes and said nothing, and in the silence, I understood that I had said something true, and that she had known it was true for a long time, but had not had a name for it. I did not push further. I did not need to. I just lay there in the blue-lit quiet and let her sit on her stool and breathe. And after a while, she started talking again. Small things at first. A case that had troubled her. A decision she had second-guessed. A being she had treated for 3 months who had recovered and never came back, not even to say they were well. She talked for 40 minutes in that careful, precise translated English, and I mostly listened, and occasionally, I said something honest, and she would pause and then go on. When she left, she picked up her scanner, checked my panel one final time, and walked to the door. "Your tissue regeneration is not complete," she said, with her back to me. "You will require an additional 7 days of observation." I had seen my own scan results on the panel that morning. They were clean. She knew I knew that. "Of course," I said. "Whatever you think is necessary." She left without another word. In the morning, the young nurse with the brighter bioluminescence came in, and immediately asked how I was sleeping. I told her moderately well. She told me, unprompted, that she had spoken to Ward 6's supervising physician about the night she had described to me, and that the physician had said something that actually helped. Her jaw markings glowed steadier than the first time I had met her. She looked like someone who had set down something heavy. Over the next 4 days, the visitors did not stop. If anything, they became more frequent and more honest. A nurse named Rel came every afternoon and sat near the door, asking questions about human grief, and what it felt like from the inside. An older medic from Ward 3 brought his own stool and told me, haltingly, about a patient he had lost 8 years ago that he had never spoken about to anyone. A young intake coordinator with flat, wide eyes came twice and mostly just sat quietly, which I recognized because sometimes that is all a person needs. Not answers, not advice, just a room where sitting quietly is allowed. Geral watched all of it from a careful distance. She filed no more procedural reports. She stopped framing the visits as operational anomalies in need of correction. On my last full day in the facility, she came in during her final rounds at a time that was, I noted, not actually part of her standard schedule. She checked my panel. Everything was good, she noted it. Then she stood at the foot of my bed and said, "The staff in this ward have not spoken about personal matters in the professional environment before your arrival. There is no protocol for it. Do you think that's a problem?" I asked. She considered the question with full seriousness, the way she considered everything. "I think," she said slowly, "that the absence of a thing is not evidence that the thing is unnecessary. It may simply mean no one has tried it before." "That's a good way to think about it," I said. "You did not simply endure your situation," she said. "You arrived here damaged, grieving, uncertain of your losses, and you spent the time between your own pain asking other people about theirs." I shrugged, which pulled at something in my shoulder, and I tried not to show it. "Someone had to," I said. "No one required you to." "No, but the alternative was lying here thinking only about the things I'd lost, and that's a very dark place to spend a week. Caring about someone else's hard day is actually one of the better escapes I've found. It doesn't fix anything, but it reminds you that you're not the only one carrying something, and that helps." Geral's bioluminescent lines ran a slow, full pulse down her neck. Then she said, quietly and without any particular ceremony, "Thank you, Owen Garrett." It was the first time she had used my name. I was discharged the following morning. A transport was arranged. 2 orderlies helped me to the corridor with my kit bag and the borrowed clothes the facility had provided. Several nurses from wards I had barely visited happened to be passing through that same corridor at that same time, and a few of them raised a hand or touched their collar, which I gathered was something like a farewell. Geral was there at the end of the corridor, near the transit door, standing with her scanner in her hand, and her expression precisely managed, the way she always looked. She handed me a small data chip with my medical summary for the next physician I'd see. "Your recovery will continue to progress," she said. "The remaining discomfort will reduce significantly within 2 standard weeks." "I know," I said. "You told me." She nodded once. Then she said, without looking at me, "I have requested a procedural review of how this ward handles staff well-being. It is under consideration." "Good," I said. "It is only a review." "It's a start," I said. She looked at me then. Just for a moment, those solid amber eyes held mine, and I thought I saw, around the edges of all that professional composure, something that was trying to find the right shape for itself, something new, or maybe something very old, that had not had room to breathe in a long time. Then she stepped back, nodded once more, and turned back toward the ward. I walked to the transit door, and through it, and out into whatever came next. I never told her that I knew exactly why she had extended my stay. I never told her that I had seen my own scan results, and understood what she was doing. Some kindnesses work better when you pretend not to notice them. She gave me 7 extra days in her facility, and somewhere in those 7 days, she started building something new. Not because someone told her to, not because a protocol required it, but because one grieving human asked how she was doing, and then waited, actually waited, for the answer. That is the thing about caring for someone. It doesn't ask you to be undamaged. It doesn't ask you to be whole. It just asks you to look up from your own weight for a moment and notice that the person next to you is carrying something too. We have been doing that for as long as we have been alive. It costs us. It always costs us. We do it anyway.